Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at a leadership idea that, well, our sources say isn't just nice to have anymore. It's essential. They're calling it polyintelligence. And to really get why it matters so much, let's just think back to April 2010. Remember the Ecological volcano, that eruption in
Oh,
Iceland?
yeah, the ash cloud.
Exactly, a purely geological thing, right? But it spreads out, grounds something like 100,000 flights, millions of people stranded, and global supply chains
Yeah.
just instantly ripped apart.
hmm A perfect storm of disruption.
And what the sources point out is this really stark difference in how companies reacted. Some, stuck in their old ways, their silos, they just froze.
Paralyzed. Couldn't cope with that level of unexpected complexity.
Totally. Single variable takes down the whole system. But then there were these others, maybe just a few, who acted instantly.
Yeah, they were rerouting cargo, perishable stuff, onto trains, onto ships, shifting production schedules across continents, moving staff around, all in real time.
Not after it all went wrong, but as it was happening. That ability, managing that intense complexity, that speed, pulling together data from logistics, finance, the environment, people. That's what our experts are calling practiced polyintelligence.
Precisely. Polyintelligence, it's really this fused capacity. The ability to sense what's happening, make decisions, and then act across different synergistic domains. It's the opposite of just being really good in your one little box.
Okay.
So the mission for us today in this deep dive is to understand how that fusion works and why now, right now, relying on just one kind of intelligence basically guarantees you'll be left behind.
Right.
You really need to grasp that the future favors connection, not just compartments. There's a quote from futurist Frank Diana. He said, "The future belongs to those who connect dots across domains before others even see them."
Connecting dots others don't see.
Exactly. And polyintelligence, that's the deliberate practice of connecting those tangled systems, especially in a world that's just getting faster and faster.
Okay, let's unpack that acceleration bit. Because before we jump to the solution, we need to get why the old way failed. Siloed intelligence worked for ages, right?
It did, yeah.
In the 90s, marketing could ignore logistics. Finance didn't worry too much about environmental data. It was just focus. Our sources say those silos, well, they used to be affordable.
They were affordable because we had buffers. We had time.
Yeah.
That luxury, it's basically gone, vanished.
Yeah.
And the reason is acceleration.
Acceleration.
Yeah, the French philosopher Paul Virilio, he really nailed the core challenge. He said acceleration compresses the distance between cause and effect. You lose that vital window, that gap between seeing something coming and needing to act on it. It just shrinks.
That compression idea, that feels like the key thing for you, the listener, to really grab onto. The telegraph, okay, it collapsed oceans into minutes. Huge deal back then.
Revolutionary.
Right. Today, algorithms collapse global markets into microseconds. If you pause to think, to reflect, you might already be too late. It almost sounds as reflection itself is becoming a liability, pushing leaders to act first, figure it out later.
Well, it definitely creates this enormous tension. And that faster tempo, it's everywhere now. A strategist, a Christian Bros, talking about military stuff, he makes it clear, decision speed equals survival in war.
Okay.
And that same speed, that's what determines who wins in the boardroom now. The battlefield, the boardroom, and crucially, the biosphere, they're all operating at the same frantic pace.
The biosphere, too.
Absolutely. And this is where it gets, frankly, existential. When we talk about the biosphere, the sources highlight these tightening climate feedback loops.
You mean how environmental changes cascade faster and faster?
Exactly. The speed at which those changes ripple through our human systems. It means hesitating on ecological signals isn't just expensive anymore. It's a threat to your actual viability. The winners are those who build systems that can act wisely, yes, but at what we have to call unnatural speeds.
Wait, unnatural speeds? I mean, that phrase is kind of chilling. It implies we need systems that work against our own human nature, our need to deliberate. How do you possibly mix that unnatural speed with actual wisdom?
You do it through fusion. That's the core of polyintelligence. We have to get past just collecting data. We need to synthesize information across three really distinct but synergistic domains.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We need to break down what each domain actually brings to the table. Let's start with human intelligence, because I guess without that, the whole thing lacks a moral compass, right? Context.
Absolutely spot on. This is what machines just can't do. Context, imagination, judgment, ethical thinking. Human intelligence takes all that data and gives it weight. It interprets the complexity, thinks about the meaning behind an action, leads with conscience. It's the moral and narrative heart.
But what if that human intuition, that gut feeling, directly clashes with what the machine intelligence is saying? That sounds like a huge source of friction.
It can be. Managing that interface is key. Which brings us to the second domain, machine intelligence. This is all about scale and speed.
Right, the heavy lifting.
Exactly. Pattern recognition on a massive scale. Advanced automation. Predictive modeling. Running simulations. Its job is to swallow petabytes of data, find the signal in all the noise, figure out the most likely outcomes, so action can happen instantly.
Okay, so human for context, machine for speed and scale, and then you wrap it all in the third one, ecological intelligence. The original script felt a bit vague here. Let's make it concrete for, say, a business listening to this.
Good point. Ecological intelligence is about understanding interdependence and limits.
Yeah.
For a company, this isn't just being green. It's fundamental systems awareness.
How so?
It means mapping your resource dependencies,
Yeah.
your whole supply chain, anticipating regulations maybe years out, using that machine speed for really granular data on, say, carbon footprint or water stress in specific regions. It's the wisdom to operate within the planet's limits and see those big systemic feedback loops coming before they hammer your bottom line.
So the real power isn't having these three separate teams or reports. It's designing how they flow together. So the machine speed, the human conscience, and the long-term ecosystem view, they merge.
Seamlessly. That's
Yeah.
the goal.
Yeah.
Designing operational systems where it all works together.
Let's make this even more real. A concrete example. NVIDIA, their strategic leap. Most people knew them for decades as the GPU guys, right?
Yeah.
Graphics cards for high-end gaming, a very profitable niche.
A very profitable silo, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
But their CEO, Jensen Huang, he showed that polyintelligent vision. He had the human intelligence, that intuition, that imagination to see that the same parallel processing they built for amazing video games
Yeah.
could power the entire future of AI. That required connecting two seemingly totally different worlds, consumer fun and bleeding-edge supercomputing research.
That's a massive insight, a huge bet. And they use the other intelligences to back it up.
They absolutely did. They deployed machine intelligence everywhere.
Huh?
Not just making the chips, but figuring out the strategy. They poured money into AI research. They partnered like crazy with big cloud companies, the ones who'd need the chips later. And they built this huge software ecosystem around it. They were building the infrastructure for a future most people hadn't even imagined yet.
Wow. Preparing the ground.
And the ecological or systemic awareness. That came from seeing how technologies were converging, recognizing that data itself was becoming the key resource and processing it at scale. That was the bottleneck. They understood the whole system was shifting under their feet.
And the result, well, we see it. When generative AI just exploded in 2023, 2024, NVIDIA wasn't just selling a product. Their chips were the infrastructure. Essential. That incredible valuation they hit. It came from sensing those shifts across science, business, society, way ahead of everyone else. Polyintelligence in action.
A textbook case of sensing across tangled domains.
Okay, so that's a powerful business example. But you mentioned earlier, if we want to see truly optimized distributed intelligence, we need to look beyond the boardroom to nature's own operating manual.
I love this comparison because nature is the ultimate master of coordinating without a CEO. It doesn't centralize intelligence. It metabolizes complexity through distributed coordination.
How does that work? Give us an example.
Okay, think about a forest. It's running on the mycelial network, basically an underground internet made of fungi and roots.
The Wood Wide Web?
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
constantly sharing nutrients, sending stress signals, trading resources. It's not just competition, it's coordination. You have older trees, the big ones. They sense a little sapling struggling in the shade, and they'll actually send sugar through the network to feed it. That's systemic resilience built on information sharing.
That's amazing, like a built-in support system.
Or look at a coral reef. It's not one thing, right? It's this emergent intelligence woven from coral, algae, fish, bacteria, currents, all collaborating. Survival depends entirely on that interdependence, not just individual strength.
Okay, interdependence.
And my absolute favorite, a flock of starlings making those incredible shapes in the sky.
The murmurations. Mesmerizing.
Totally. But there's no leader bird directing the show. It's pure local pattern logic. Each bird just follows one simple rule. Adjust your flight based on your 7 closest neighbors. That's it.
7 neighbors.
Just 7. And from that simple distributed sensing comes this breathtaking coordinated precision. The lesson for leaders, Coordination can achieve way more than top-down command and control.
Okay, so nature thrives on this distributed, fused intelligence. What happens to organizations still stuck in the old ways? The sources mentioned two big traps, right? Things that stop us adapting at those unnatural speeds.
Yeah, two critical traps. The first one is classic, paralysis by analysis.
Heard that one before.
Right. Information stays locked in silos. Data doesn't get synthesized. You just get swamped with conflicting reports. Everyone argues about which expert is right. And meanwhile, the world zooms past while you're stuck debating. Inaction.
Okay, paralysis by analysis. What's the second trap?
It's the dangerous flip side. Reflex without reflection.
Ah, so acting too fast.
Acting fast, yes, but without wisdom. The leader just reacts instantly to whatever seems loudest or most urgent, but there's no synthesis. No check against human context or ecological consequences. Speed becomes a liability, not an asset. You crash the car faster.
Right, that makes sense. Which brings us to military thinking again. John Boyd's OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. Super influential, but the sources seem to say the modern world kind of breaks that loop.
Well, Boyd was brilliant. He identified orientation as the absolute heart of the loop. That's the magic step where you synthesize all the inputs, align different perspectives, really understand the context. But here's the problem. If everything's moving at unnatural speeds, how do you stop orientation from just becoming another slow committee meeting that makes you miss the boat?
Exactly. That's the core tension, isn't it? Don't you have to act first and understand later sometimes just to keep up?
It feels like you do, and it's a necessary risk without polyintelligence. But a system built on polyintelligence changes orientation itself. It stops being a pause, a separate step. It becomes a continuous systemic capability.
Oh,
Think of the starlings again. They don't stop flying to have an orientation meeting. The synthesis is instant and distributed. You use machine intelligence to do the bulk of the rapid synthesis. And human intelligence checks the systemic and ethical angles as part of the flow before you hit decide. Orientation becomes embedded, not separate.
okay. So orientation gets faster, smarter, more integrated.
And to really nail this, you have to master time itself. Another strategist, Robert Lienhard, argued time is the battlefield, and it has four parts: duration, frequency, sequence, and opportunity.
Duration, frequency, sequence, opportunity.
Okay, a polyintelligence system excels here. It manages the frequency of updates using machine intelligence. It dictates the sequence of actions using human oversight. And it anticipates opportunity using that ecological systemic awareness.
Mastering those lets you move beyond just slugging it out, right? It lets you maneuver, disrupt, maybe even preempt the competition or the crisis. You're acting fast, yes, but wisely fast because the synthesis is built in.
Spot on. So wrapping this up, what does this really mean for you listening right now? Polyintelligence isn't about finding some superhero leader who's a genius in all three areas. That's impossible.
Right.
It's fundamentally about system design. It's about building organizations, designing operating models where these different intelligences can flow, connect, and adapt almost instantly.
And it really changes the leader's job description, doesn't it? You're not just a firefighter anymore, always reacting tactically to the latest crisis, the newest blaze.
No.
You become more like an architect, a systemic steward, someone who designs the environment the organization operates in, anticipating what's coming next.
That's a great way to put it. And just to recap how the intelligences work together for that architect role. Machine provides the speed, accelerates the signal. Human injects the ethics, the narratives, the wise judgment. And ecological teacher ensures the whole thing is resilient and sustainable for the long haul.
So the ultimate aim here is building organizations that don't just survive complexity and speed, but actually thrive in it. That's something no single spreadsheet, no clever algorithm, no isolated department could ever pull off alone.
Absolutely. And the sources argue pretty convincingly that this isn't really a choice anymore. The environment, whether it's the battlefield, the boardroom, or the biosphere, demands it because they all share that same compressed tempo. So if our survival or success depends on acting wisely at these unnatural speeds, it leaves us with a pretty provocative thought, doesn't it?
Which is?
How do we, in our daily work in our organizations, fundamentally design orientation, that crucial moment of synthesis and connection, into the very fabric of our routines? How do we make it continuous instead of treating that vital activity as an interruption to getting things done?